I married him for love. Then I watched him shatter my children. In our picture-perfect Texas home, the charming real estate king became a monster behind closed doors, shaking my son, terrorizing his own kids, leaving bruises and fear that no one else could see. I was the lucky stepmom until I became the warrior. I documented every scream, every mark, every nightmare. I built an ironclad case, faced him in court, and took him down, protecting all four kids, exposing his abuse to the world, and watching his empire crumble. This isn't just a breakup story. It's a mother's revenge, a fight for justice, and the moment I reclaimed my power. Watch how one woman turned heartbreak into unbreakable strength. You won't look away. I was 35, living in a modest two-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, when life finally felt like it had stopped punishing me. My divorce from Mark had been finalized 3 years earlier. He'd left for a 26-year-old marketing assistant with highlights and a laugh that echoed through our old house like a betrayal. The custody agreement gave me primary physical custody of Emma and Liam, but the emotional wreckage lingered. Emma, 11, had developed a fierce independence, burying herself in books and school newspapers to avoid talking about her dad's absence. Liam, 9, still drew pictures of our old family in crayon, stick figures holding hands, then quietly tore them up when he thought I wasn't looking. I worked as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized SaaS company downtown. The job paid the bills, barely, and the commute was brutal, 45 minutes in stop-and-go traffic each way, but it gave me structure. Mornings were rushed. Cereal bowls, backpack checks, drop-off at the elementary school. Evenings were homework battles, soccer practice, and bedtime stories until they both finally drifted off. We had our rituals: Friday night pizza on the balcony, watching fireflies flicker in the humid Georgia dusk. It wasn't glamorous, it was survival, but we were surviving together. Dating? I'd tried. A handful of Tinder swipes led to awkward coffee meetups where men either bolted when I mentioned kids or lingered too long asking if I was open to fun without strings. One guy actually said, "You seem great, but I'm not ready for the mom package." I laughed it off in the moment, cried in my car afterward. Eventually, I stopped trying. The kids were enough. I told myself I was content. Then Jack walked into my life like he'd been waiting for the cue. It happened at an industry networking mixer in a glassy downtown hotel ballroom in May. I was there in a simple navy sheath dress I'd scored on clearance, name tag slightly crooked, feeling like an imposter among the power suits. Jack was at the appetizer table, reaching for the same shrimp skewer I was. 6'3", broad shoulders, salt and pepper hair cut short, brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled. Real estate developer from Dallas, in town for meetings. We started with small talk. Atlanta traffic is the worst, right? And somehow ended up debating the superiority of Georgia barbecue over Texas brisket. He laughed, deep, genuine, at my jokes. When he asked for my number, it didn't feel like a line. It felt like inevitability. Our first real date was 2 weeks later. He flew through Atlanta on his way back from a conference in Miami and took me to a quiet Italian spot in Buckhead. No flashy moves, just good wine, pasta, and conversation that stretched past midnight. He told me about Sarah, his wife, who'd died of breast cancer 4 years earlier, how he'd sat with her through chemo, held her hand until the end, then raised Sophie, 13, and Ethan, 10, mostly alone. His voice cracked only once. I told him about Mark's affair, the screaming matches, the lawyer fees that wiped out our savings, the nights I'd rocked Liam while he cried for a father who'd already checked out. By the tiramisu, our hands were touching across the table. When he kissed me goodnight in the parking lot, soft and slow, I felt something wake up inside me that I'd thought was dead. We texted constantly after that. Good morning voice notes, memes at 2 a.m., photos of everyday life. He sent videos of Sophie spiking volleyball, Ethan building Lego skyscrapers. I sent back Emma's latest opinion piece for the school paper and Liam's superhero drawings. The kids started noticing. "Is that the Texas guy again?" Emma would tease, smirking. Liam asked if Jack liked Fortnite. 6 months passed in a whirlwind. Weekend visits turned into long stays. The first time he met the kids properly was at Six Flags over Texas. He bought unlimited wristbands, carried Liam on his shoulders when the boy's legs gave out, let Emma drag him on every inverted coaster without complaining. Sophie watched him warily at first. Teenagers don't trust easily, but by Sunday she was laughing at his awful puns. Ethan and Liam became instant buddies over Minecraft. Driving back to the hotel that night, Emma whispered, "He's actually nice, Mom. Like dad nice." I fell completely. Jack made me feel beautiful, capable, wanted. He talked future without hesitation, blending our families, finding a bigger house, maybe even legal adoption down the line. "I want us all under one roof," he said one night on the phone. "No more goodbyes at airports." My guarded heart cracked open wide. The proposal came in October at his Dallas home. String lights in the backyard, a fire pit glowing, our favorite foods catered. The kids were in on it. Sophie helped pick the ring, platinum with a sapphire, understated and perfect. When he knelt in front of everyone, voice thick with emotion, asking me to marry him and be their family forever, I said yes through happy tears. The kids rushed us in a group hug. Champagne popped, sparkling cider for them. It felt like redemption. The wedding was the next June in the Texas Hill Country, a small vineyard ceremony with rolling green hills and golden light. 80 guests, Emma and Sophie in lavender dresses, scattering rose petals, Liam and Ethan arguing over who carried the rings. My sister sobbed during the vows. Jack's voice broke when he promised to love, honor, and protect all 4 children as his own. I meant every word I said back. We honeymooned in Cabo, sunsets, beach walks, long talks about the house we'd buy together outside Dallas. The kids stayed with my parents and sent daily texts with silly selfies. When we returned, we packed my Atlanta life into a U-Haul. Jack flew up to help drive the 1,200 miles. We stopped at diners, took detours to national parks, sang along to country radio. Pulling into her Frisco home felt like arriving somewhere safe. The house was stunning. Open layout, huge kitchen, a pool the kids dove into immediately. They claimed rooms, plotted sleepovers. Jack wrapped his arms around me from behind as we watched them. "This is our life now," he murmured. For months, it was almost perfect. Family dinners, Jack coaching soccer, helping with homework, attending school events. The kids started slipping dad into sentences naturally. I pictured Thanksgivings, Christmases, graduations, all of us together. But even in those golden early days, tiny shadows flickered. A sharp correction to Liam's manners, a heavy sigh when Emma asked one too many questions, a clenched jaw when interrupted. I dismissed them as adjustment pains. Blending families is hard, I told myself. I had no idea how wrong I was or how fast the dream would turn into a nightmare. The first 12 months after the wedding felt like living inside a carefully curated Instagram reel. Sun-dappled mornings, laughter echoing off vaulted ceilings, 4 kids tumbling through the house like they'd always belonged there. Our new life in Frisco, just north of Dallas, was everything I'd dreamed of during those lonely Atlanta nights. The house Jack had bought years earlier was sprawling. 5 bedrooms, a chef's kitchen with granite islands big enough for all of us to crowd around, a backyard pool that turned summer into an endless vacation. We painted the kids' rooms together, lavender for the girls, deep blue for the boys, and hung framed photos of our wedding day in the hallway. Every time I walked past them, I smiled. This was us. This was forever. Jack threw himself into fatherhood with an enthusiasm that made my heart swell. He signed Liam up for youth soccer and showed up at every Saturday practice, whistle around his neck, shouting encouragement from the sideline. "That's my boy," he'd yell when Liam scored, even if it was an own goal. He helped Emma with her middle school science fair project, building a working model of a solar-powered car out of spare parts from his garage. Sophie, who'd been quiet and guarded at first, started opening up. He taught her how to drive a golf cart around the neighborhood, let her blast her playlists in the car without complaint. Ethan followed Jack everywhere like a shadow, asking endless questions about real estate and construction. "When I grow up, I want to build houses like Dad," he announced one night over tacos. Family dinners became sacred. Jack insisted we eat together every night. No phones, no TV. He'd light candles, pour sparkling water into wine glasses for the kids, and ask each of us one thing we were grateful for. My answers were always the same. This table, These people, this second chance. The kids rolled their eyes at the ritual, but secretly loved it. After dinner, we'd pile onto the sectional for movie nights. Disney classics, Marvel blockbusters, whatever the majority voted for. Jack would stretch out with me tucked under his arm, Liam sprawled across our laps, Sophie texting friends but still laughing at the screen. It was ordinary magic. Weekends were adventures. We drove to Lake Louisville for picnics and paddleboarding. Jack rented a boat one Saturday and let the kids take turns steering while he coached from the back. Emma caught her first fish, a tiny bass, and screamed with delight when it flopped on the deck. Sophie filmed the whole thing on her phone, captioning it "Family Goals" when she posted it, privately to her close friends only. Jack grilled burgers that night on the patio while fireflies danced over the grass. I stood at the kitchen window watching him flip patties, sleeves rolled up, laughing at something Ethan said, and thought, this is what healing looks like. He was affectionate in ways Mark never had been. Morning kisses before coffee, surprise flowers delivered to my office, handwritten notes slipped into my lunch bag. "You make this house a home," one read. I kept them in a shoebox under the bed, like talismans. At night, after the kids were asleep, we'd sit on the back porch swing with a bottle of red wine, talking about the future. College funds, family vacations to Europe, maybe even a baby of our own someday. He'd trace circles on my palm and say, "I never thought I'd get this lucky twice." But perfection has edges, and I started noticing the tiny nicks. It began with tone. One evening, Liam spilled milk across the kitchen island while reaching for the cereal. The white puddles spread fast. Jack's voice cut through the room sharper than I'd ever heard it. "Jesus, Liam, watch what you're doing. That's granite, it stains." Liam froze, eyes wide. I jumped in. "It's okay, buddy, accidents happen. Grab a towel." Jack exhaled hard through his nose, wiped it up himself with quick, angry swipes. "Just trying to teach responsibility," he muttered. I let it slide. Moving states, new routines, everyone was stressed. Then came the corrections. Emma had always been opinionated. It was one of the things I loved about her. During dinner one night, Emma argued with Jack about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. "It's objectively gross," she declared. Jack's fork paused mid-air. "Watch the attitude, young lady. Respect your elders." His tone was low, controlled, but the table went quiet. Emma's cheeks flushed. She looked at me. I said lightly, "She's just sharing her opinion, babe, no harm." Jack forced a smile, but his jaw stayed tight the rest of the meal. Small things piled up. He'd sigh heavily when Sophie asked to stay up late for a school project. "Rules are rules," he'd say, voice edged. When Ethan forgot to take out the trash, Jack stood over him while he did it, arms crossed, narrating every step like a drill sergeant. "Lift with your legs, not your back. Don't drag it, carry it." Ethan's shoulders hunched smaller with each command. I talked to Jack about it privately one night after the kids were in bed. We were in our bedroom, lights low. "They're still adjusting," I said gently. "Maybe ease up on the discipline a little." He rubbed his face, looked tired. "Sarah was the soft one. I had to be the structure. They need boundaries, babe. Your kids especially. They came in with no real rules." The words stung, but I swallowed them. Mark wasn't right about Mark's lax parenting style. Maybe I was being too permissive. Maybe this was what a strong father looked like. I convinced myself the tension was normal. Blended families fight, right? Articles online said the first year is the hardest. Power struggles, loyalty conflicts, grief resurfacing. Jack lost his temper sometimes, sure, but he never raised a hand, never called names. He apologized after the sharper moments, pulling the kids into hugs, saying, "I love you guys, just want what's best." They'd nod, forgive fast. Kids are resilient like that. So I kept smiling through the cracks. I planned more outings, cooked his favorite meals, initiated more intimacy to keep us connected. I told myself the good outweighed the uneasy moments. The pool days, the movie nights, the way Sophie now called me mom without hesitation, the way Liam asked Jack to help tie his cleats. These were the real story. But deep down, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, a small voice whispered, "Something's off." I pushed it away. I'd waited too long for this happiness. I wasn't going to let a few rough edges ruin it. I had no idea those edges were sharpening into blades. By the second summer in our Frisco home, the rhythm of our blended family had settled into something that felt almost effortless on the surface. The kids were thriving in their new schools. Emma made honor roll and joined the school newspaper. Liam's soccer team won their division championship. Sophie tried out for varsity volleyball as a freshman and made the squad. And Ethan discovered a passion for robotics club. Jack's real estate business was booming. He closed a string of luxury home deals that had him traveling less and home more. We hosted backyard barbecues for neighbors, celebrated birthdays with elaborate cakes I baked from scratch, and even started a family tradition of Sunday pancake mornings where everyone got to pick their toppings. To anyone watching from the outside, friends, coworkers, the parents at soccer games, we looked like the picture-perfect modern American family. But perfection is fragile, and the warning signs were creeping in like humidity before a Texas thunderstorm. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. It started with Sophie's nightmares. She'd always been a light sleeper, but now she woke almost every night around 2 a.m., heart pounding, sheets twisted around her legs. I'd hear her bare feet pad down the hallway to my side of the bed. "Mom?" she'd whisper, voice small in the dark. I'd pull back the covers, let her crawl in between Jack and me. She never wanted to talk about the dreams, just needed to be close. Jack would grumble sleepily, roll over, but he never complained outright. I stroked her hair until her breathing evened out, then carried her back to her room when she was out again. In the morning, she'd act like nothing happened, but the dark circles under her eyes told a different story. Ethan changed too, in quieter ways. The boy who used to chatter nonstop about dinosaurs and Minecraft builds grew subdued. He stopped asking Jack questions at dinner. When Jack entered a room, Ethan's shoulders would inch up toward his ears, like a turtle pulling into its shell. I noticed him hovering near me more, sitting on the arm of my chair while I worked, following me into the kitchen when I made snacks. One afternoon, I found him in the laundry room, folding towels with meticulous care, even though no one had asked him to. "Just helping," he said when I questioned it, but his eyes darted toward the hallway where Jack's office door stood closed. The flinching was the hardest to watch. It happened in small, split-second moments. Jack would reach across the table to pass the salt, and Ethan's hand would jerk back, as if expecting a slap. Sophie would flinch when Jack raised his arm to scratch his head or adjust his baseball cap. Liam started doing it too, ducking slightly if Jack's voice rose even a fraction above normal volume. I told myself it was hypervigilance, a leftover from grief or the stress of blending families. Kids pick up on tension, but the more I watched, the less that explanation held. Then came the night that cracked the surface wide open. It was a Thursday in late August, still sweltering even after sunset. I'd stayed late at the office finishing a client presentation, texting Jack that I'd be home around 8:30. Traffic on the Dallas North Tollway was a nightmare, construction everywhere, so I didn't pull into the driveway until closer to 9. The house lights were on, windows glowing gold against the dark yard. I expected the usual, kids in pajamas, maybe a movie paused on the TV, Jack on the couch with his laptop. Instead, the living room was silent, too silent. I set my bag down quietly and walked toward the hallway. That's when I heard it, Jack's voice, low and controlled, coming from Ethan's room. "You think this is a game? You think you can just ignore me?" Each word was clipped, deliberate. I froze outside the door, heart thudding. Ethan's reply was barely audible. "I'm sorry, Dad. I forgot." "Forgot?" Jack's tone sharpened. "You don't forget when it matters. You don't forget when I tell you to clean your room before I get home. Look at this mess. Look at it." I pushed the door open slowly. Ethan was standing in the middle of his room, arms at his sides, staring at the floor. Toys and clothes were scattered across the carpet. Not terrible, just the normal chaos of a 10-year-old space. Jack loomed over him, arms crossed, face flushed. Sophie sat on the edge of Ethan's bed, knees drawn up, eyes wide and glassy. She saw me first, and her mouth opened in a silent gasp of relief. Jack didn't notice me yet. "Pick it up, now. Every single thing. And if it's not perfect by the time your mom gets home, you're not eating breakfast tomorrow. Understand?" Ethan nodded quickly, bending to grab a Lego piece. That's when Jack raised his hand, not to hit, but to point sharply at the floor. Ethan flinched so hard his whole body jerked backwards, stumbling into the dresser. The sound of wood hitting wall was sharp in the quiet room. I stepped forward. "What's going on?" Jack turned, startled, then smoothed his expression into something calmer. "Just handling a little discipline. Ethan didn't do his chores, again." Sophie's voice came out small but steady. "He was going to do it, he just got distracted playing Roblox." Jack shot her a look, quick, warning. "Stay out of it, Sophie." I moved between them, placing a hand on Ethan. He was trembling. "It's late," I said evenly. "Everyone's tired. Let's finish this tomorrow." Jack exhaled through his nose, the same sound he made when he was holding back anger. "Fine, but this isn't over." He walked out, brushing past me without another word. I knelt in front of Ethan. "You okay, buddy?" He nodded, but tears spilled over. Sophie slid off the bed and wrapped her arms around him from behind. They didn't speak, just held on. Later, after tucking them in, extra hugs, extra stories, I found Jack in our bedroom, already in bed, scrolling on his phone like nothing had happened. I closed the door softly. "What was that?" He didn't look up. "He needs to learn accountability. Sarah let him run wild. I'm not making the same mistake." That wasn't teaching, that was scaring him. Jack finally met my eyes. "You're too soft on them. All of them. They need structure, especially your two. They came in thinking the world revolves around them." The words landed like a slap. "They're children, Jack, not employees." He set his phone down. "I'm trying to be the father they need, the one I never had. You want me to back off? Fine, but don't come crying to me when they turn into entitled brats." I stood there, stunned. This wasn't the man who'd carried Liam on his shoulders at Six Flags, who'd cried during our vows. Or maybe it was, and I'd been too in love to see it. That night, I lay awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing while my mind raced. The flinching, the nightmares, the way the kids' laughter dimmed when he entered a room. These weren't adjustment pains. These were red flags waving in a wind I'd pretended wasn't blowing. I told myself one more time, give it time, talk to him again, maybe couples counseling. But the small voice inside me, the one I'd silenced for so long, was growing louder. Something was wrong, and it was getting worse. The unease that had been simmering beneath our family life finally boiled over on a Tuesday afternoon in October, when the Texas sky was that perfect autumn glue, crisp, cloudless, the kind that makes you forget how quickly storms can roll in. I'd wrapped up my work presentation early, impressing the client enough that they signed off on the quarter's marketing budget ahead of schedule. My boss texted congratulations. I replied with a thumbs up emoji and decided to surprise the kids with ice cream from the local shop on my way home. It was one of those rare weekdays with no practices or meetings, just a chance to kick back as a family. Traffic was light on the tollway, and I made it back to Frisco in record time, pulling into the driveway at 3:45 p.m. The house looked peaceful from the outside, Jack's truck parked straight, no signs of chaos. I grabbed my purse and the half-melted pint of mint chocolate chip from the passenger seat, humming a tune from the radio. The garage door was cracked open, which was odd. Jack usually kept it closed for the AC bill, but I figured he'd been tinkering with something, maybe fixing Ethan's bike or organizing tools. I pushed through the side door into the garage, the cool air hitting me like a wave. And that's when I heard it. Jack's voice, raised to a level I'd never quite heard before. Raw, furious, edged with something dangerous. "You think you can just break my stuff and walk away? Huh? Answer me!" My blood turned to ice. I set the ice cream down silently on the workbench, heart slamming against my ribs, and crept toward the open door leading into the main house. The yelling was coming from the living room, just beyond. "You little brat, do you know how much that cost? It's not a toy, it's a collector's item." Jack's words were punctuated by a sharp thud, like something hitting flesh or fabric. Liam's voice, small and terrified. "I'm sorry, it was an accident, please." Another thud. "Accident? You're always having accidents. Maybe you need to learn some respect the hard way." I burst through the door, my vision narrowing to the scene in front of me. Jack had Liam by the upper arm, fingers digging in deep enough to leave immediate welts. He was shaking him, not gently, but with force, Liam's feet barely touching the carpet as his body jerked back and forth like a rag doll. Tears streamed down my son's face, his free hand clawing weakly at Jack's grip. In the corner, Ethan stood frozen against the wall, eyes wide as saucers, mouth open in silent horror. Sophie huddled on the couch, her knees to her chest, sobbing quietly into her hands, her phone discarded on the cushion beside her. Time slowed. The room smelled of spilled soda and fear sweat. A broken action figure, Liam's favorite Spider-Man from last Christmas, lay shattered on the coffee table, limbs twisted unnaturally. "Let him go, now!" My voice exploded from somewhere deep in my chest, louder than I'd ever yelled, raw and unyielding. Jack whipped around, surprise flashing across his reddened face. He released Liam instantly, and my son crumpled to the floor in a heap, scrambling backward until his back hit the wall. Jack's chest heaved, sweat beading on his forehead. "Sarah, it's not what it looks like. He broke my signed baseball from the '95 World Series. I was just what?" I cut him off, stepping between them, my body a shield for the kids. "Teaching him? By shaking him like a criminal? Look at his arm, Jack. You're hurting him." Liam whimpered, rubbing his arm where angry red fingerprints bloomed against his pale skin. Sophie peeked through her fingers, whispering, "Mom, he does it when you're not home. Yells, grabs us. Last week he pushed Ethan against the fridge for spilling juice, said if we told, we'd be sorry." Ethan nodded, voice muffled. "He said it's our fault for making him mad." Liam lifted his head, hiccuping. "I didn't mean to break it. It fell when I was reaching for the remote." My mind reeled. How long? How much had I missed while at work, running errands, trusting this man? The flinching, nightmares, tense dinners, it all clicked into horrifying focus. This wasn't discipline. This was abuse. I held them tighter. "None of this is your fault. None of you. Jack's wrong, and I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner, but I see it now. We're going to fix this." From the garage, I heard Jack banging around, tools clanging, muffled curses. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from him. "Calm down. It was nothing. Let's talk later." I deleted it without replying. Instead, I texted my sister in Austin. "Emergency. Can we crash with you tonight? Kids in trouble." Her reply was instant. "Of course. What's wrong? Coming now?" "We'll explain. Pack bags quietly," I whispered to the kids. While Jack stewed outside, we slipped upstairs. Toothbrushes, pajamas, favorite stuffed animals stuffed into backpacks. I grabbed my laptop, important papers from the safe, birth certificates, bank statements. Evidence? Not yet, but the image of those fingerprints on Liam's arm burned into my brain. We snuck out the front door while Jack was still in the garage. The kids piled into the minivan, silent and shell-shocked. I drove straight to my sister's, 4 hours south, stopping only for gas and drive-through food they barely touched. That night, in her guest room, with all 4 kids crammed into one bed for comfort, I promised them, no more fear, no more secrets. We're getting help, real help. And Jack, he's done hurting us. The breaking point had come, and from the wreckage, my resolve was forging something unbreakable. The drive from Frisco to my sister's house in Austin that October night felt endless. 4 hours of dark highway, headlights slicing through the Texas scrubland, the kids huddled in the back seats like refugees. No one spoke much. Liam clutched his Spider-Man blanket, staring out the window at nothing. Sophie scrolled her phone with the brightness turned way down, occasionally wiping her eyes. Ethan kept his arms wrapped tight around himself, as if holding his own body together. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached, replaying the garage scene in my head on an endless loop. Jack's red face, Liam's dangling feet, the broken toy, the fingerprints already purpling on my son's arm. Every mile I put between us felt like reclaiming a piece of air I hadn't known I was missing. We arrived just after 1 a.m. My sister, Rachel, met us at the door in sweatpants and a messy bun, eyes wide with worry. She didn't ask questions right away, just ushered everyone inside, set up air mattresses in the guest room, handed out water bottles and blankets. Once the kids were finally asleep, tangled together like puppies for comfort, Rachel pulled me into the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of wine without asking if I wanted one. "Tell me," she said. I told her everything, the sharp corrections that had turned into yelling, the flinching, the nightmares, Sophie's whispered confessions, the garage confrontation. When I showed her the photos I'd snapped of Liam's arm in the gas station bathroom light, 5 distinct finger marks, she covered her mouth. "That's assault," she whispered. "You need to document this, right now, before he spins a story." She was right. The next morning, while the kids slept in, I sat at her kitchen table with my laptop and started building a case. I wasn't going to rely on memory or emotion alone. I needed proof that would hold up if this went legal. First, I opened my phone's Notes app and typed a detailed timeline, dates and times of every incident I could recall, starting with the small ones, the milk spill, the pizza argument, and building to the garage. I included quotes as best I could remember. "You little brat. Maybe you need to learn respect the hard way." I noted witnesses, Sophie and Ethan for most of them, and Liam's own words afterward. Next, photos. I'd already taken close-ups of Liam's bruises in good lighting. Now I emailed them to myself with timestamps. I asked Sophie if she had any old texts from Jack, ones where he'd scolded her harshly or threatened consequences. She handed over her phone without hesitation. There were dozens. "If you talk back again, you're grounded for a month. No phone, no friends." "Don't test me, Sophie. You won't like what happens." I screenshotted them all, saved them to a secure cloud folder labeled Evidence, October 2025. Rachel suggested a nanny cam. "Texas is a one-party consent state for audio in common areas," she said. "If you go back for anything, install one, hidden, living room, kitchen, places he spends time with them alone." I ordered 2 wireless models online that afternoon, small, disguised as smoke detectors and clock radios, set for overnight delivery to Rachel's address. I wasn't planning to return yet, but if I had to retrieve more belongings or serve papers, I'd be ready. That evening, I called a family law attorney recommended by a coworker who'd gone through a nasty custody battle. Her name was Maria Delgado, based in Austin, specializing in domestic violence and child endangerment cases. She took my call after hours, pro bono consult for emergencies. I walked her through the story, sent her the photos and timeline via secure portal. Her voice was calm, steady, no nonsense. "This qualifies as coercive control and physical abuse of a minor. The shaking, the marks, the pattern of intimidation, that's not discipline, it's endangerment. We can file for an emergency protective order tomorrow morning. You'll get temporary custody, no contact except through court-approved channels. CPS will likely open an investigation based on the visible injuries and the other children's statements." She asked about the stepkids. I told her Sophie and Ethan had endured years of similar treatment, verbal berating, occasional pushes, isolation punishments. "They're terrified of him," I said. "But they're also his biological children. Will that complicate things?" "Not if we prove imminent danger to all 4, Maria answered. "Texas courts prioritize child safety over parental rights when abuse is documented. Get statements from the older 2 if they're willing. Therapists can help too. Start looking for child psychologists who do forensic interviews." Before we hung up, she gave me one last piece of advice. "Don't go back alone. Don't confront him. Don't give him a chance to charm or threaten his way out of this. Document, protect, proceed through the system." That night, I sat with Sophie and Ethan after the younger ones were asleep. We talked in whispers on Rachel's couch. I explained what was happening. No more living with Jack, at least not for now. I asked if they wanted to tell their stories to a lawyer or a counselor. Sophie nodded immediately. "I'll do it. He's been mean since Mom died. I just didn't know how to say it." Ethan hesitated, then whispered, "I don't want him to hurt Liam or Emma anymore, or me." We cried together. Quiet, exhausted tears, and I promised them again, "You're safe. We're building a new life, and no one gets to scare you like that ever again." The next day, I installed the nanny cams when the packages arrived, tested them, linked them to my phone app. I transferred more money into a separate account Jack didn't know about, enough for first and last on an apartment if needed. I changed passwords on everything: email, banking, social media. I blocked his number temporarily just to breathe. By Friday, Maria had the emergency protective order paperwork ready. We met at her office. The kids gave video statements in a separate room with a child advocate present. Liam showed his bruises again. The judge reviewed everything that afternoon: photos, statements, texts, and signed the order within hours. Jack was barred from contact, from the house, from the kids, except supervised visitation pending investigation. Police would serve him that evening. When the process server texted me a photo of the papers in Jack's hand, his face pale, mouth open in shock, I felt the first real breath I'd taken in months. We weren't safe yet, but we were moving, documenting, escaping, and for the first time since the wedding, I wasn't apologizing for protecting my children. The fight had just begun. The morning after the protective order was signed felt like waking up in a different country, one where the air was lighter and the rules finally favored the vulnerable. I sat at Rachel's kitchen table in Austin with a mug of black coffee gone cold, staring at the PDF of the emergency order on my laptop screen. The judge's signature was crisp, black ink on digital paper. Temporary restraining order granted. Respondent prohibited from contact with petitioner and minor children. No unsupervised visitation pending CPS investigation and hearing. Below it, the list of names: mine, Emma's, Liam's, Sophie's, Ethan's. All protected. All mine to safeguard. Maria Delgado, my attorney, had warned me the first 24 hours would be chaos. She was right. Jack's phone calls started at 7:03 a.m. Blocked, but the notifications piled up on my new burner phone. Missed calls, voicemails I deleted without listening, texts that flashed across the screen before I blocked the number. "This is insane. You're overreacting. The kids need me. Call me so we can talk like adults." I didn't respond. Maria had drilled it into me. No direct contact. Everything through lawyers. No exceptions. By 9 a.m., the Frisco Police Department had served the papers. Maria forwarded me the confirmation email from the process server, a photo of Jack standing in his driveway, suit jacket unbuttoned, face pale as he accepted the envelope. In the picture, his mouth hung open mid-sentence, eyes wide with disbelief. I saved the photo to my evidence folder. It wasn't gloating, it was proof he'd been notified. The system was moving. Maria scheduled an emergency hearing for the following Monday to make the temporary order permanent and address custody. In the meantime, CPS, Child Protective Services, opened their investigation. A caseworker named Miss Torres called me that afternoon. She sounded tired but kind, the voice of someone who'd seen too many broken families. "I'll need to interview the children individually," she said. "And you, and Mr. Reynolds, of course. We take allegations of physical abuse seriously, especially with visible injuries." I agreed to everything. Miss Torres arrived at Rachel's the next day, a clipboard in hand, a soft-spoken woman in her 40s with a badge clipped to her blazer. She met with each child separately in Rachel's home office, while I waited in the living room, twisting a tissue into knots. First Sophie, then Ethan, then Liam and Emma together. The interviews lasted over an hour each. When they finished, Miss Torres sat with me on the couch. The older two, Sophie and Ethan, are very clear. They describe a pattern of verbal intimidation, physical grabbing, and occasional pushing. They say it's been happening since their mother's death. The younger ones corroborate: fear of yelling, flinching, the incident in the garage. Liam's bruises are consistent with being shaken forcefully. I've photographed them for the file. My stomach twisted. What happens now? We'll interview Mr. Reynolds tomorrow at his home. He'll have a chance to respond. We'll also request medical records, school reports, anything relevant. If the evidence supports imminent danger, we'll recommend continued removal of the children from his care. I agreed to everything. Miss Torres arrived at Rachel's the next day, a clipboard in hand, a soft-spoken woman in her 40s with a badge clipped to her blazer. She met with each child separately in Rachel's home office, while I waited in the living room, twisting a tissue into knots. First Sophie, then Ethan, then Liam and Emma together. The interviews lasted over an hour each. When they finished, Miss Torres sat with me on the couch. The older two, Sophie and Ethan, are very clear. They describe a pattern of verbal intimidation, physical grabbing, and occasional pushing. They say it's been happening since their mother's death. The younger ones corroborate fear of yelling, flinching, the incident in the garage. Liam's bruises are consistent with being shaken forcefully. I've photographed them for the file. My stomach twisted. What happens now? We'll interview Mr. Reynolds tomorrow at his home. He'll have a chance to respond. We'll also request medical records, school reports, anything relevant. If the evidence supports imminent danger, we'll recommend continued removal of the children from his care. I agreed to everything. That evening, I gathered the four of them in Rachel's backyard under the string lights. We sat in a circle on blankets, eating pizza straight from the box. I explained the hearing in simple terms. A judge is going to decide where you live and who gets to see you. We're asking to stay together, away from Jack until he gets help. You might have to talk to the judge or write a letter. You don't have to see him if you don't want to. Sophie spoke first. I want to tell the judge what he did. I'm not scared anymore. Ethan nodded. Me too. Liam looked at me with big eyes. Will he be mad? I pulled him close. He can't hurt you now. The police and the judge are on our side. Emma, usually quiet in big moments, added, "We're a family, all four of us. That's what matters." Monday morning dawned bright and cold. I dressed the kids in their nicest clothes, button-downs for the boys, dresses for the girls, and we drove to the Travis County Courthouse. Maria met us in the lobby, briefcase in hand, heels clicking on marble. "We've got strong evidence," she reminded me. "Stay calm, let me do the talking." The courtroom was small, wood-paneled, smelling of old paper and coffee. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes behind glasses, called the case quickly. Jack arrived late, tie crooked, flanked by his own lawyer, a slick Dallas lawyer in a $1,000 suit. He didn't look at me or the kids. His gaze stayed fixed on the bench. Maria presented first. The protective order, Liam's bruises, projected on a screen, screenshots of texts, Sophie and Ethan's written statements, and Miss Torres's preliminary report. "This is not a custody dispute between parents," Maria said firmly. "This is child endangerment. The respondent has engaged in physical and emotional abuse of all four minors. We request sole temporary custody to the petitioner and supervised visitation only after anger management evaluation and parenting classes." Jack's lawyer countered, "My client is a loving father who lost his temper once. The petitioner is exaggerating to gain custody advantage. Parental alienation is clear. She moved the children out of state without notice." The judge listened, expression unreadable. She asked to speak to the children in chambers, privately with only the guardian ad litem present. Sophie, Ethan, Liam, and Emma filed out, small but steady. 20 minutes later, they returned, faces flushed but calm. The judge reconvened. "I've reviewed the evidence and spoken with the children. The bruising, the consistent accounts of fear and intimidation, the pattern described by the older children, all point to coercive control and physical abuse. I am granting temporary sole custody to the petitioner and supervised visitation only after anger management evaluation and parenting classes." Jack's face drained of color. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Jack stood abruptly, chair scraping, and walked out without a word. Outside the courthouse, the kids hugged me hard. Sophie whispered, "We did it." Ethan fist-bumped Liam. Emma smiled for the first time in days. The legal fight had begun, and we'd won the first round. Jack's mask had slipped in open court. The truth was on record, and for the first time since I said, "I do," I felt the ground solid under my feet. But I knew he wouldn't go quietly. The real battle was just starting. With the temporary custody order in place and the kids settled into a fragile new normal at Rachel's house in Austin, the adrenaline of the first court win began to fade, replaced by a quieter, more determined urgency. I couldn't afford to coast. Jack wasn't the type to slink away quietly. He'd already lawyered up, and his attorney had filed a motion to dismiss the protective order, claiming lack of imminent danger and exaggerated allegations. Maria warned me the 30-day hearing would be brutal. Jack's side would paint me as the vindictive ex-stepmom weaponizing the kids for leverage. To win permanently, we needed more than bruises and statements. We needed the full picture, the history that proved this wasn't a one-off outburst, but a pattern, years in the making. I started where most secrets hide, in the digital shadows Jack thought he'd buried. One rainy Saturday, while the kids were at a neighbor's playdate, I opened my laptop and logged into the family iCloud account we'd shared during the marriage. Jack had never changed the password. Arrogance, or maybe he assumed I'd never look. I downloaded every photo, note, and email backup from the last 5 years. Buried in the miscellaneous folder were screenshots from his late wife's old phone, ones she must have saved before she died. Dated 3 years before Sarah's car accident, they showed text threads between her and a friend. He grabbed my wrist so hard I had bruises for a week, said I was hysterical. I'm scared for the kids. Another, Ethan cried himself to sleep again after Jack screamed at him for spilling ink. I don't know how much longer I can do this. My hands shook as I read. Sarah had documented everything. Dates, incidents, even Polaroids of faint marks on her arms she'd hidden under long sleeves. One photo showed a split lip she'd captioned, "He said I fell. I didn't." The last entry was dated 2 months before the accident. "If something happens to me, tell my sister. He's getting worse." I saved every file to an encrypted drive, then emailed copies to Maria with a single line. "This changes everything." Next, I reached out to Sarah's family. Her sister, Claire, lived in Houston. We'd met at the wedding, brief hugs, polite small talk, but I'd always sensed she was holding something back. I found her number in an old group chat and texted, "Claire, it's Sarah, Jack's wife. I need to talk about what happened with the kids. It's urgent. Please call when you can." She called within the hour. Her voice cracked on the first hello. I knew something was off with him. Sarah confided in me for years. The yelling, the controlling, the way he'd isolate her. After she died, he cut us off, said we were toxic, but we never bought the accident story. The police called it a single vehicle crash, no witnesses, brakes failed. She'd been complaining about him tampering with her car the month before. We tried to push for an investigation, but there wasn't enough evidence. We talked for 2 hours. Claire sent me a Dropbox link filled with Sarah's old journals, medical records of unexplained injuries, and emails Sarah wrote but never sent, to a domestic violence hotline, to a divorce lawyer. One entry stood out. "If I leave, he'll take the kids and make my life hell. Better to stay and protect them quietly." Claire agreed to sign an affidavit and testify if needed. "For Sarah," she said, "and for those babies." Armed with Sarah's records, I turned to Jack's professional life. He'd always bragged about being respected in the industry, but I remembered overhearing tense phone calls, deals falling through, partners pulling out. I created a burner email and sent anonymous tips to 3 of his biggest clients and 2 real estate forums where developers networked. The message was simple: concerned about working with Jack Reynolds, multiple reports of aggressive behavior, anger issues affecting business decisions, check public court records, recent protective order involving child endangerment. I attached redacted screenshots of the order, no kids' names visible. Within days, I saw ripples. A LinkedIn post from one partner announcing they'd parted ways amicably, another client's website removed Jack's firm from their preferred vendors list. Maria was thrilled when I showed her. This isn't revenge, it's establishing pattern and character. Courts consider credibility. If his business associates see red flags, it undermines his loving father defense. I didn't stop there. I requested school records for Sophie and Ethan from their Frisco district, attendance notes mentioning frequent tardies due to home conflicts, counselor reports of anxiety around authority figures. The elementary school principal emailed back personally. Ethan often appeared withdrawn after weekends at home. We recommended counseling, but Mr. Reynolds declined. Sophie's middle school file noted 3 incidents of her shutting down during class after family arguments. Finally, I hired a private investigator through Maria's referral, a retired cop named Ramirez who specialized in family cases. For a reasonable fee, he dug into Jack's background, old police reports from his first marriage, a dismissed domestic disturbance call Sarah had never pressed charges on, employee complaints at his company, 2 former assistants quit citing hostile work environment, even a bar fight from college that had been hushed up. Nothing criminal enough to prosecute on its own, but together it painted a portrait, a man who controlled through fear, who lashed out when challenged, who'd been doing it for decades. By the end of the month, my evidence binder was 3 inches thick. Sarah's journals, Claire's affidavit, business fallout emails, school reports, PI findings, updated CPS notes from follow-up interviews. The kids were seeing a therapist twice a week, trauma-focused play therapy for Liam and Ethan, talk therapy for Sophie and Emma. Their drawings shifted from dark storms and yelling stick figures to brighter scenes, 4 kids holding hands under a big sun, mom in the middle like a shield. Jack tried one last play before the hearing, a surprise offer through his lawyer. Mr. Reynolds is willing to drop all motions and agree to joint custody with counseling if you retract the abuse allegations and allow him back in the home. Maria laughed when she read it. Classic abuser tactic: minimize, negotiate, regain control. We're not interested. I stared at the offer letter on my phone, feeling a cold clarity settle in. This wasn't about winning a custody battle anymore. It was about exposing the truth so no child, mine or anyone else's, would ever have to flinch again. The deeper I dug, the clearer the monster became, and the stronger I grew. The 30-day hearing loomed like a storm cloud on the calendar, but I refused to wait passively for justice to arrive on its own timeline. Jack had spent years building an image: successful developer, devoted widower, family man, and that image was his armor. I decided to chip away at it methodically, piece by piece, without ever crossing into illegality or pettiness. This wasn't about rage-fueled payback. It was about consequences, real, lasting ones that would echo long after the gavel fell. First came the quiet strikes, the ones no one could trace back to me directly. I'd already seen the early fallout from the anonymous tips I sent to his business contacts. Now I expanded the net. Using public records from the protective order, which were searchable online once filed, I compiled a simple 1-page summary. Date of filing, judge's findings of credible evidence of child endangerment, redacted excerpts from CPS notes mentioning physical restraint and bruising. No names of the kids, no inflammatory language, just cold facts. I created a new Gmail account with no ties to me and sent it, along with links to the court docket, to every major player in Dallas-Fort Worth real estate I could find: title companies, mortgage lenders, architects he'd collaborated with, even the Chamber of Commerce where he'd once been named Developer of the Year. Within a week, the ripples became waves. A luxury home builder who'd partnered with Jack on a high-end subdivision project issued a press release announcing they were pursuing new strategic alliances. Another investor pulled funding from a mixed-use development Jack had been pitching for months. On a private developers forum, one I lurked on using a pseudonym, threads popped up. Anyone else hear about Reynolds? Court docs look bad. Lost a deal with him last month. Temper was always an issue. Heard clients are walking. Smart money moves quiet. His LinkedIn activity slowed to nothing. No more check-ins at closing parties. No more humble brag posts about record sales. The empire he'd built on charm and intimidation was starting to crack under its own weight. But business damage was only part 1. Part 2 was public exposure. Careful, controlled, and child-focused. Maria had drilled into me the importance of timing, nothing that could be spun as parental alienation or media circus before the final hearing. So I waited until the kids' therapist cleared them emotionally. Sophie, now 14 and fiercely articulate, said, "I want people to know what he did, not just us, other kids too." Ethan nodded. If it helps someone else, I'm okay. Emma and Liam were younger, so I kept them out of the spotlight entirely, but they understood. We're telling our story so no one else gets scared like we did. With their consent, I reached out to a local investigative reporter at a Dallas-Fort Worth NBC affiliate. Her name was Lauren Hayes, known for balanced, hard-hitting pieces on family violence and institutional failures. I emailed her anonymously at first, attaching the public court filings, redacted CPS summary, and a brief outline. Stepmom fights back against child abuse in blended family. Evidence includes documented bruising, witness statements from 4 minors, a pattern of coercive control spanning years, willing to go on record if identity's protected. Lauren responded within hours. We met virtually first, me on video with my face blurred, voice slightly altered through software Maria recommended. I told her the story from the beginning, the whirlwind romance, the early red flags, the garage incident, the protective order, the kids healing in therapy. I shared anonymized excerpts from Sophie's and Ethan's therapist notes with releases signed, photos of Liam's bruises, faces blurred, and Claire's affidavit about Sarah's experiences. Lauren listened without interrupting, then asked the key question, why go public now? I said, because silence protects abusers, and my kids deserve to know their fear wasn't their fault. If this helps one other family see the signs earlier, it's worth it. She agreed to run the story, but only after vetting every detail with her legal team. The piece aired 2 weeks before our final hearing, a 10-minute segment titled Blended Family Nightmare: Stepmom's Fight to Protect Children from Hidden Abuse. My face and voice were disguised. The kids were referred to only as 4 minors ages 9 to 14. No names, no identifying locations beyond North Texas. But the facts were stark. Emergency protective order granted, CPS investigation ongoing, documented physical and emotional abuse, a pattern corroborated by the biological mother's surviving family. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media comments flooded in. This is why I left my ex. Same exact behavior. Thank you for speaking up. My stepdad was like this too. Former employees of Jack's company posted anonymously. He screamed at assistants until they quit, always blamed everyone else. A woman claiming to be Sarah's old friend shared a link to an obituary and wrote, "She never got justice. Glad these kids might." The story was picked up by local blogs, then a national domestic violence awareness site. Hashtags like hidden abuse and stepmom warrior trended regionally for days. Jack felt it. Maria received a frantic call from his attorney the next morning. "Your client is orchestrating a smear campaign. We'll seek sanctions." Maria laughed it off. Everything in the segment is public record or corroborated testimony. First Amendment applies. See you in court. Privately, I watched his world shrink. A sponsor for his upcoming charity golf tournament pulled out, citing recent controversies. His firm's website traffic plummeted. Google reviews suddenly appeared from anonymous former associates, mentioning volatile temperament. He stopped posting family photos, the ones he'd kept up even after we left, and went radio silent on social media. The empire he'd built on charm and intimidation was starting to crack under its own weight. The kids noticed the shift too. Sophie showed me her phone one night. "Look, Mom, people are saying we're brave." Ethan added quietly, "I feel less scared knowing other people believe us." This was calculated revenge, not vengeance born of hate, but accountability forged in truth. Jack had spent years intimidating the vulnerable. Now the light was on him, and shadows don't survive scrutiny. The final hearing was approaching. His empire was crumbling, his reputation tarnished, his control slipping away. And I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't broken a single law. I'd simply stopped protecting his secrets. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is refusing to stay silent. The final hearing arrived on a gray November morning in Travis County Family Court, the kind of day where the Texas sky hangs low and heavy, pressing down on everything below. I woke before dawn at Rachel's house, nerves buzzing like live wires under my skin. The kids were still asleep, 4 small bodies curled under blankets in the guest room, faces peaceful for the first time in months. I stood in the doorway, watching them breathe, memorizing the sight. Whatever happened today, this moment was already a win. They were safe, together, and no longer flinching at every raised voice. I dressed carefully, simple black blazer, white blouse, low heels, nothing flashy, nothing that could be spun as aggressive or vindictive. Maria had coached me. Look like the mother you are, calm, composed, let the evidence speak. I pinned my hair back, kissed each sleeping forehead, and left with Rachel driving. The courthouse loomed ahead, concrete and glass, the American flag snapping in the wind outside. Inside, the hallway smelled of floor wax and anxiety. Jack was already there, seated on a bench with his attorney, looking smaller than I remembered. His suit hung loose, dark circles shadowed his eyes. He didn't meet my gaze when I passed, his stare fixed on the marble floor. His lawyer, the same slick Dallas shark from the emergency hearing, gave me a curt nod. No pleasantries, no fake smiles. The game was over. The courtroom was the same wood-paneled space, but it felt smaller today, the air thicker. The judge entered at exactly 9 a.m., robe swishing, gavel in hand. Everyone rose. Reynolds v. Petitioner, final custody and protective order modification hearing. Maria went first, calm and methodical. She called the mountain of evidence forward, like pieces on a chessboard. The emergency protective order, Liam's photographed bruises projected large on the courtroom screen, red finger marks stark against pale skin. Updated CPS report concluding substantial risk of harm if returned to respondent's care. Therapist summaries detailing ongoing trauma symptoms in all 4 children, nightmares, hypervigilance, trust issues. Sophie's affidavit, typed in her own words at 14. My dad used to scare me so much I hid in my closet. He grabbed my arm hard when I talked back. I'm afraid he'll do it again. Ethan's, shorter but no less powerful. He yelled until I cried. He pushed me once. I don't feel safe with him. Claire testified via Zoom from Houston, Sarah's sister, voice steady despite tears. She read from Sarah's journals, dates of incidents, descriptions of control and violence, the fear that kept her silent. My sister died in a suspicious accident. Jack cut us off after. I believe he was capable of worse. These children deserve protection she never got. Jack's attorney objected repeatedly, relevance, hearsay, speculation, but the judge overruled most. This goes to pattern and character, she said flatly, overruled. When it was their turn, Jack took the stand. He looked directly at the judge, voice measured, practiced. I love my children, all 4. I lost my temper that day, yes, I regret it, but I've completed anger management classes, parenting courses. I've never been arrested, never charged. This is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by a woman who wants to erase me from their lives. His lawyer paraded character witnesses, a business partner who called him a passionate but fair, a neighbor who said the kids always seemed happy at barbecues, a coach who praised his soccer involvement. They painted a picture of a hardworking dad under stress, not a monster. Then Maria cross-examined Jack. Mr. Reynolds, did you shake Liam by the arm on October 15th until his feet left the ground? Jack shifted. I grabbed him to get his attention. He broke something valuable. Did you leave bruises consistent with forceful gripping? I don't recall the exact force. Maria projected the photos again. These are the marks photographed that same day. Do you dispute them? Jack looked away. No. Did you ever grab Sophie by the arm hard enough to make her cry? I disciplined her when necessary. Did you push Ethan against the refrigerator for spilling juice? A long pause. It was a rough day. Maria didn't let up. She walked him through Sarah's journal entries, the dismissed domestic call from years ago, the employee complaints, the business partners who distanced themselves after public exposure. With each question, Jack's composure frayed, answers shorter, voice tighter, sweat beading on his forehead. Finally, Maria asked the killer question. Mr. Reynolds, have you ever sought professional help for anger management before these proceedings? He hesitated. No, I didn't think I needed it. The courtroom went dead quiet. The judge allowed brief closing arguments. Maria's was direct.
This is not a custody tug of war. This is a pattern of coercive control, physical intimidation, and emotional abuse spanning years across 2 wives and 4 children. The evidence is overwhelming. Sole custody to the petitioner, termination of unsupervised rights, and a permanent protective order are the only outcomes that protect these minors. Jack's lawyer argued mitigation, completed classes, no prior convictions, desire to rebuild, but the words sounded hollow against the stack of documents on the bench. The judge recessed for 20 minutes. When she returned, her face was unreadable. She spoke slowly, each word deliberate. I have considered all testimony, exhibits, and reports. The bruising on Liam, corroborated statements from all 4 children, historical pattern from the biological mother's records, CPS findings of risk. These do not demonstrate isolated incidents. They demonstrate systematic emotional and physical abuse. Respondent's own testimony confirms lack of insight into his behavior. Anger management completion post-filing does not erase the harm already done. She paused, eyes sweeping the room. Temporary sole managing conservatorship is made permanent. Petitioner is awarded sole custody of all 4 minor children. Respondent's parenting rights are terminated as to visitation except for court-supervised therapeutic sessions only after 12 months of verified individual and family counseling. A lifetime protective order is granted. No contact outside supervised settings. Child support is ordered per guidelines, plus full reimbursement of therapy costs. Case closed. The gavel cracked like thunder. Jack's attorney whispered urgently. Jack stood, face ashen, and walked out without looking back. The door shut behind him with a soft click. Outside the courtroom, the kids rushed me in a group hug. Sophie crying happy tears, Ethan pumping his fist, Liam burying his face in my side, Emma smiling so wide it lit the hallway. Maria hugged me next. You did it. They're yours, all of them, forever. I held them close, tears streaming. The fight had been long, brutal, exhausting, but in that moment, with the judge's words still echoing, I felt something shift inside me. Not just relief, but power, real, unshakable power. Jack's world had crumbled in open court. Ours was just beginning to rebuild.
3 years had passed since the gavel fell in that Travis County courtroom, and the life we'd rebuilt in Austin looked nothing like the one we'd fled from in Frisco. The house we called home now was modest by Texas standards, a single-story ranch style on a quiet cul-de-sac in South Austin, with a wide front porch, a backyard big enough for a trampoline, and windows that let in morning light like forgiveness. No pool, no granite islands, no echoes of yelling. Just us, 4 kids who'd grown taller, louder in the best ways, and me, finally breathing without looking over my shoulder. Sophie was 17 now, a senior at the local high school, captain of the debate team, and already accepted early to UT Austin for pre-law. She'd chosen it herself. I want to help kids who feel like we did, trapped, scared, not believed. On weekends, she volunteered at a youth shelter downtown, sitting with younger girls who'd run from abusive homes, listening without judgment. When she came home those nights, her eyes were tired but bright. I told one girl today that it gets better, she said once, hugging me tight, because it did, because of you. I held her longer than she expected, throat thick with pride. Ethan, 13, had traded his quiet flinches for cleats and confidence. He played varsity soccer as a freshman, midfielder, quick feet, relentless work ethic. Jack had coached him once. Now the only coach Ethan knew was the one who high-fived him after every goal and never raised his voice. Ethan still had moments. Loud noises made him tense, but he talked about them in therapy, worked through them. He'd started a robotics club in school, building drones and solar cars with a group of misfit geniuses who treated him like the leader he'd become. I'm not afraid of failing anymore, he told me one evening while we tinkered in the garage, because failing doesn't mean getting hurt, it just means trying again. Emma, 14, had blossomed into a writer. She kept journals now, not the dark, fearful scribbles from those early months, but stories of brave girls who saved themselves and their siblings. Her English teacher entered one in a statewide contest. It won second place. The piece was about a family running through a storm to find sunlight on the other side.
When she read it aloud at the award ceremony, her voice steady and clear, I cried in the back row. She dedicated it to, "The mom who taught me strength isn't loud, it's steady." Liam, 12, was the laughter in our house. He'd grown into a gangly kid with a mop of curls and a grin that lit rooms. Soccer, still, but also guitar lessons. He'd taught himself chords from YouTube and played terrible covers of Taylor Swift songs until we all begged for mercy. The nightmares had stopped. The flinching was gone. When he hugged me goodnight now, it was with the loose, trusting arms of a boy who knew the world wouldn't suddenly turn mean. Me? I'd changed too. After the final hearing, I left my corporate marketing job. No more long commutes, no more pretending everything was fine. I started small, a blog under a pseudonym about surviving hidden abuse in hidden families. Posts about red flags, legal steps, healing after trauma. It grew quietly, then quickly. Thousands of readers, messages from women and some men saying, "This is my story too." Last year, I turned it into a nonprofit, Safe Blend Families. We offered free legal consults, therapy referrals, safety planning workshops. I spoke at women's shelters, churches, online panels. Every time I stood at a podium, I thought of the version of me who'd once dismissed a sharp tone as stress. I wasn't that woman anymore. Dating? Slowly. A few coffees, a handful of dinners. Nothing serious yet. The kids came first. Always would. But I allowed myself small joys. Morning runs along Lady Bird Lake, coffee with Rachel on weekends, quiet evenings on the porch swing with a book and no fear of footsteps behind me. Jack faded. His business collapsed within a year. Major deals dried up, partners bailed, lawsuits from disgruntled clients over aggressive tactics. Last I heard through Claire, he'd sold the Frisco house at a loss, moved to a condo in a Dallas suburb, and kept a low profile. No more charity galas, no more Developer of the Year plaques. He'd sent one letter through his lawyer after the final order, apologizing, asking for forgiveness, claiming he'd changed. I never responded. The kids didn't want contact, and the court agreed, no obligation. He was a ghost now, irrelevant. One evening last spring, we sat around the fire pit in the backyard, marshmallows roasting, stars sharp overhead. Sophie started it. "Remember when we thought we'd never feel safe again?" Ethan nodded. "I used to hide under my bed." Liam added, "I thought yelling was normal." Emma looked at me. "But you changed everything." I swallowed hard. "We changed it together. You were brave. You told the truth. That's what broke the cycle." Sophie reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're the best mom, blood or not." The words landed soft and true. I'd married for love once, believed in forever, watched it turn to fear. But out of that wreckage came this. 4 incredible humans calling me mom, a home filled with laughter instead of tension, a purpose bigger than myself. I looked up at the sky, felt the warmth of the fire on my face, listened to their voices overlapping in easy chatter. The nightmare was over. The dream, the real one, was here. We'd survived. We'd fought. We'd won. And every day since, we kept choosing light over shadows. This was our true story, not the one that began with a whirlwind romance, but the one that ended with unbreakable strength, chosen family, and the quiet power of a mother who refused to stay silent. In America, in Texas, in Austin, under these same stars, we were free.